Thank you. 6 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is adoption of the agenda. Moved by Mitchell, moved by Finch, seconded by Mitchell, that the agenda be adopted as printed and circulated. Are there any issues with the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Then next is minutes, and moved by Grigg, seconded by Stewart, that the minutes from the September 6th, 2023 council meeting be adopted as printed and circulated. Are there any issues with those minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we have no timed items tonight. And sorry, I forgot to check before the meeting started. There was no public comment period submissions made. Okay, so no public meetings, no delegations. So we go straight down to reports from staff. And the first one is 8.4 A from Public Works. Report 2023-117 from the Director of Public Works and the Director of Finance regarding increased service level for capital road projects and associated financial implications. And Steve, I will turn it over to you to give any highlights to council that you want before I ask them for questions.
Nothing to highlight. It says in the recommendation for council information. However, staff will need some direction to be able to prepare a draft 10-year capital roads budget to the Director of Finance to proceed with budgeting on time.
Questions from council on the report? Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, Steve, just maybe if you could speak to the increased service level, and what you define that as, because that doesn't necessarily mean just paving every road that sees adverse conditions at certain times of the year. So I don't know if you could kind of speak to that and the sort of how that affects your 10-year capital planning.
So the increased funding would allow us to rebuild some more roads, not necessarily hard surface them, but rebuild them to get a better base standard, and ultimately work towards a full load road, so we can, lift half load during half load season for full load roads. With better road base, we'd be able to do that. The funding would give us more ability to do more roads per year. It would also allow us to look at conversions of existing gravel roads that do meet all the MTO criteria that could be converted to hardtop surface.
So just follow up. So more funds. You're basically on track, or the report indicates that you're fairly well on track with road needs study. But it's a bigger investment into our roads. It's increasing service levels in the sense that we have full load roads instead of half load roads, and where needed or where meeting specific criteria so that it's a fair process to examine this, we're looking at the option of taking a full gravel road to a paved option.
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Grigg.
I'm going to try this. So in our roads needs plan, based on that initial study and then assessed by staff and endorsed by council, are there currently any roads that are slated for conversion from gravel to paved, or from one service level to another, that are meeting thresholds that will be coming up? Is the mechanism in place to measure and capture those and make those proposals through the budget process to council in play, or is there a mechanism that would have to be enacted in order to implement that?
So we do have a plan for roads. We have several roads that are, one in particular, the meeting criteria now and have met criteria for some time. They're fully rebuilt roads. They're widened. They've been vertical and horizontal curves have been removed to make them more suitable to meet criteria. These roads are in the 10-year with, in Table A. They're included, but they're quite a ways out yet. I think I got them in for maybe 2031 when we start on these roads for looking at conversion. So they're ways out if we stay status quo with our funding right now. So yes, we do have a plan for some conversions in the future.
So, sorry. Because this report is sort of framed around two different scenarios, one that was triggered by some inquiries around 29th line, and the other one is with maintaining our existing service level and existing infrastructure. When we have a current plan that includes making those types of improvements, those are sounding like service level change. So as we're discussing it as a council, if we say change service level, is that, when we're maintaining our existing service level, are we endorsing, are we restricting those types of changes that are meeting thresholds that have been identified by staff, that are captured in the roads need study that's coming forward?
So to understand.
Just mostly, and sorry, mostly just so that as we continue discussion, I just want to make sure I'm understanding from fellow councilors when we're talking about this, that the study does, and staff have identified some of these improvement changes, widenings, conversions to take place when warranted in the right locations. And so when we're talking about changing of service level or a Table B conversation, that is to implement specific projects, or is that to expedite these projects?
The report is in light of the expediting the one road, the 29th line, as per the motion. The Table A shows without, and Table B shows with that in the equation. As per the roads needs study, obviously that would not be part of it. However, as with the extra funding, it would move roads that do meet the requirements now and have for several years, be moved up on the scale to say 2027, such as.
Anyone else? Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, I'm not totally clear on what direction we need here, and I think that's what you're trying to get at too, is falls within, although albeit more costly maybe than the way you've been budgeting for the last few years or whatever, that still falls within the current goal set of the township. So I'm not sure how we give more clear direction. If we want to maintain and or speed up, if there's a road that as of today should be fixed, obviously we have to be responsible, because we can't fix every road that meets the qualifications or that needs to be fixed. And you have to plan that out over a certain amount of years. But you need specific direction to take a road that meets MTO criteria today from 2031 to 2027. Like just as an example, to use your example.
No, I don't necessarily need direction on that. I need direction on Table A or Table B in the report, what direction we need to go forward with that in the budget. Do we include the 29th line in this budget, or do we not? Pretty much to be clear. We need that direction to be able to prepare a final budget. With that, though, a 29th line, if it would require more funding, that funding would stay within the road project, the road capital needs, and going forward, which would, in turn, after the 29th line, more funding would be put towards other roads, which do meet the criteria and do require rebuilding for full load.
So the intent with a road that currently, as of today, meets it is that we can start putting a little bit of money away so that in 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever the time may be, we may have enough money to do the full pave of that road. Is that the intent of how you're mapping it out over 10 years?
So the way the Table B budget has been put together, that 29th line would be in 2024 budget. Other projects would be pushed back to fit that in the 2024 budget, and they would be fit in 2025. Obviously with a higher percentage of funding, especially in the first year, and that's the highest year. After that, I believe the second year was a what was it? About 2.5% in 2025. 4.8 the first year, now 2.5 the second year. And then going forward from there, that would allow us the additional funding to keep going on that path. Okay.
Anyone else? Questions on the report? I don't have a motion here in front of me. Moved by Grigg, seconded by Stewart, that council receive report 2023-117, and that council endorse maintaining the current service level that the township has in place as shown in Table A to be decided on at time of budget, and that council endorse moving towards an improved roads network through the work of the director and the road needs plan. Deputy Mayor Grigg is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
Okay, so this report came as a result of some discussions we had about a specific road that came up of concern. But I think as a council, what we need to consider are two things. Are we interested in an increased service level when it comes to our roads network, and subsequently an increased financial contribution to fund this? And then the second question is, are we interested in using our roads needs study and the expertise of our director to determine what projects need to happen at what time? Or are we looking to deviate from that to undertake specific other alternate projects? It was, I think, a really great shift in how we undertake maintaining our roads when that study was conducted by a third party 5 years ago. At that time, staff then were able to review the results of the study and put a further lens on with their deeper understanding of the nature of the municipality and the roads and how they're used to make some modifications which we were able to endorse. The intention is that this is a responsible and equitable approach to maintaining our network, as opposed to, I think, some of what happened in the past, which may have been as well-intentioned, not as strategic as what we have now. This plan is something that I reference in conversations with residents when they have a concern about their road. Any concern that any resident has, I think our responsibility is to look at the municipality as a whole. And so this document is something that I've been able to refer myself to and residents to as a guide to what the plan is and why that plan is in place. My understanding is that the director is in constant review of this study as the roads are changing, and we've seen that happen multiple times where the scope of work is modified. We had 15th line reconstruction have a slight modification to widen the platform to accommodate the use of that road being used a lot for cycling, running, and in light of a safety concern with a tragic accident that happened there. So there was a modification to adjust We've had projects that have pushed back because the roads have held a little bit longer than we thought they might. And we've had projects pulled forward because they were deteriorating faster than anticipated. So from my experience, we've had great success with this plan and with utilizing the best resource that our staff are able to provide us, which is a deep understanding of how this stuff works. I'm highly uncomfortable with getting into alternate work sequence or not using a plan and deviating from that, because to me it undermines the value of the plan. What I will say is, when I was doing a bit of research on this, I was looking at our draft capital budget for our road projects versus our final budget. And already there's projects that go into those initial draft capital budget that get cut before we get to a final budget. So I do think that there's value in adding additional financial resources to our capital roads projects. But to say that that is to increase the level of service to allow for half-load roads to become transition towards full-load roads, or loose top to transition to hard top, that's where I don't think it's that I'm comfortable saying. That is something that I think I would want to leave to the discretion of the director. Of course, council has final say as we approve budget annually, but I would like the direction to be to the director to put in front of us the roads that need to be happening in sequence. So the endorsement of Table A is to confirm that I will not be in support of moving forward with changing the work plan to include a paving of 29th line, regardless of funding, whether it's over 2 years or 10 years, to be done in priority next year. But when I'm endorsing Table A, maintaining at current service level, that is also to recognize that within the plan, when thresholds are met, that the director will be bringing forward budgets that reflect some improvements to our roads that are not just replacing like for like. I would also be interested in seeing some aggressive budget numbers that, not aggressive for staff to come up with, but aggressive for council to try to fund, so that we can start achieving these road projects more aggressively, and that there will start becoming building capacity within our budget to start making more of those upgrades that Steve is identifying. You know, there's roads that could be seeing upgrades in 2031 that could be pulled forward. I don't want to pull those forward until I know we're properly taking care of all of the ones that are now. So that last little piece about, I can't even remember what I said now. The last piece about moving towards improved road network is to encourage staff to bring forward a budget that perhaps reflects a little bit of added funding into our road network to help achieve the plan more thoroughly and also timely.
Councillor Stewart is the seconder.
Tough to follow that, but a quick pop quiz for you, Steve. How many kilometers do we have to maintain of roads? Yeah, in the township. So if we're going to sit here and look at
Almost 500 kilometers in total.
okay, so 500 kilometers. There's no way that we can take point-in-time assessments of road conditions, you know, and as bad as conditions may have been at certain times of the year in certain locations because of weather events and other high-volume traffic, and use that data as our planning point for 10 years worth of budgets. We have a good start in the road needs study. I wasn't a part of that process, but it seems like it lays it out well. But it's not just, we're just taking that information, you're constantly evolving that. You're looking at if we can stretch something out further because something else changed. Road conditions are going to change, or traffic conditions are always going to change. So I'm encouraged by the fact that we still have this document, but that we're evolving it and that we're taking it year by year and using that as our baseline. So I think it's absolutely the right way to go with it. But yes, I endorse as well what Katie's saying is if it means that we have to start investing more in our roads, then I'm for that as well.
Anyone else? Counselor Mitchell?
I prepared some comments, not so much towards the motion because I went with what the report said, that it was information only. But we'll address how I'm going to vote on this. First of all, roads are number one priority for most rural residents. And when I talk rural residents, I mean everybody that lives outside of Thamesford and Embro. And I say that not only as a longtime rural resident, but in my experience as a counselor when I was campaigning, the concerns that were raised with me was the condition of their road. People take possession of their road. And I would, in the last almost 5 years, I would, at least 9 out of 10 concerns that I've had, either in person, email, or telephone calls, have had to do with road conditions. So I want to thank Steve and Diane for bringing forward this report ahead of budget so that we can discuss this issue without all the other busyness that's involved in budget, although it's ultimately the budget will decide where we go on this. And I also want to thank them for the historical context that they include in that, with the background of the road needs study. And what jumped out at me, it was in this report, and what jumped out at the previous council when we received it was a very scary number of $12.81 million 2019 dollars of work required in the next 10 years. And I remember our reaction when that number came out. So I went through the worksheets that was provided in the report and looked at the projects that have been completed up to now under the categories of now needs and 1 to 5 years. And what the consultants budgeted for roughly $10.6 million, we've brought in for under 7, for a difference of $3.6 million, or 34% under what the consultants projected it would cost to do the work that's been done this far. And to me that's very encouraging because it shows that we've done sound project planning and execution, we've done timely and responsible budgeting, and we've also made good use of our own Zorra resources on these projects. I looked at the 2 tables that we're discussing, and the other scary number that's already been talked about is the 109% increase in the tax levy in 2024 as opposed to a 39% increase. And that is true, that is due to the Line 29 potential paving project. And if you look at the numbers, taking out the work on or deferring the work on Line 35 to 2025 and adding in the full paving job on Line 29 pretty well balances out the reason for that increase. The motion that was included in the report, which I brought forward back in April, used the worded included paving Line 29 in 2024 budget. What we passed was consider paving Line 29 in the 2024 budget. So I took that as a partial victory. It wasn't included, but my colleagues didn't say, no way, we're not even going to consider it. It's still hanging on there somewhere. I support paving Line 29, and I argued long and hard at the April meeting why I support it. I'm not going to waste everybody's time by repeating that. If it's still a possibility when we get to budget time, I will be making an argument for it again. But I added up those 2 tables, and the total project costs in Table A are just under $20 million, and in Table B they're $25.1 million, for an increase of about $5.1 million. And the tax levy total is about $10.5 million, and for an increase of $15.8 million, so an increase of $5.3 million. And it's been said a number of times around this table, around this horseshoe, that taxpayers will support an increase in taxes if they see an increase in services and infrastructure. And I think, at least for the people I represent, they won't be happy with the tax increase, but they would accept it if we were able to accelerate the maintenance work on our roads. The political challenge in a tax increase for roads is that would be bringing it in at the same time as the ZMF is finally being put into use. And we have had some pretty negative feedback within the community because of the delays. And we can argue whether that, we all know what the delays were, but the public perception is a bit damaged by what has happened by the delays in getting that going. But the upside of the new ZMF, and what we talked about at some length when we were deciding how to design it and how big to make it, is that we're looking, I think, at some considerable savings with the operation in that building, which could be used to offset some of these increases in capital projects, and specifically energy. The green energy components should make this building considerably less expensive than the two previous buildings. The operating efficiency, as far as having parts and lubes and those sort of things on supply, some things such as the overhead crane, which allows 2 employees to put on the plows instead of 3 or 4, and also the expectation of extended equipment life. But now that we have indoor wash bays, it's going to make it much easier and hopefully much more frequent that the equipment can be washed. I'm going to vote against the motion, although I am happy to see that my colleagues are open to increasing funding for roads. I think that's critical that we do that. But I can't vote. I support Table B, primarily because it includes the Line 29 paving, and I rarely make decisions based politically, or strange as that may sound, but I made a commitment to the people that I represent that I would do whatever I could to get that piece of road paved, because I think it should be. So based on that, I'm going to have to vote against the motion because it's not included in what's been put forward.
Anyone else? I have a question for staff. The motion that is on the floor, does that give sufficient direction, the direction that was talked about, going into preparing 2024 budget?
Yes, I think it does. I think we can prepare a pretty healthy budget and present that to council for budget deliberations.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, at any time. Moved by Grigg, seconded by Stewart, that council receive report 2023-117 and that council endorse maintaining the current service level that the township has in place, as shown in Table A, to be decided on at time of budget. And that council endorse moving towards an improved roads network through the work of the director and the road needs plan. Microphone.
So it doesn't actually say we're not going to do the 29th line of part of that, right?
I guess that would be a question for staff. Certainly my interpretation of this would be that it would say to proceed per the road needs plan. And by that, Road 29 or any other road would show up where it shows up.
That is
Is
correct.
that, okay, so that is the way staff are interpreting it. I think that was the intent, so yes.
I'm kind of torn. I feel the same as Paul. I have most of the calls I get from residents is about roads. And I honestly think that we should be putting a little more money into roads. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Grigg.
I was going to make a point of clarification. I just watch that I'm not saying the same thing over. The intention of the last portion of that motion is that we're asking staff, so I referenced table A versus table B. I use that language from the report to specifically say this, not that. And the piece about move towards improved road network is to ask staff to bring forward a capital budget that has not had as much trimmed out of it as what we've historically seen. So the intention is that we will see increased costing in the budget that comes forward, and that ultimately that will be a decision of council at the time of budget, but that some of that trimming hasn't happened first. So over time, if there's more funding that's able to go into the department, that we will see that in improved roads network improvements. Both implementing, all of it will be implemented through the road needs study. Some of it to maintain our existing infrastructure and renew it, and sometimes at the discretion of staff when thresholds were met, will mean making modifications to improve them to different service levels, like loose top going to hard top, half load going to full load, or widening projects that come up.
Anyone else? I fully agree with Paul that I think the number one issue that I get calls from residents about is roads, whether it's, I mean, across the whole township, but especially for rural residents, those living on gravel roads. You know, whether it's speeding or intersection safety or dust or potholes or whatever the case may be, it's the number one issue. And so I'm very supportive of, you know, better funding and possibly increasing the level of service for the roads that we have. I think all our residents would want that, right? Whether it's their road gets, you know, rebuilt so that it's no longer half load, or their road gets, you know, rebuilt in town because it's now a safer road, or whatever the case may be. I think our residents, and to Paul's point, I think they would all say that I would be willing to pay incrementally more taxes for. So I'm very supportive of that. But I would only, you know, as one member of council, I would only be supportive of that in the context of the road needs study. That I think that's how we need to prioritize these things. And frankly, my concern around it would be if we were to prioritize Road 29, which my understanding right now is that it would not be the top priority for these increased funds that we may allocate. And another resident came forward and said, well, what about my road? My road has higher needs. They would be right. And how would I explain to them that their road has a higher justification in our own road needs study and yet is not being done? And then what about the next one? And then the next one, and then the next one. And I would really rather not, you know, pardon the pun, head down that road of reprioritizing them sort of ad hoc, sort of. So to me, I will support the motion in front of us, because I definitely support increasing allocation of resources to public works to improve the level of service for the roads. But I really want it done in the context of that road needs study, you know, as the Director of Public Works revises it on an annual basis, and as we may go out and get it redone in a bigger picture. But that's the way I would be willing to support this. So is there anybody else before I read it again and call the question? Moved by Grigg, seconded by Stewart, that council receive report 2023-117 and that council endorse maintaining the current service level that the township has in place as shown in table A to be decided on at time of budget, and that council endorse moving towards an improved roads network through the work of the director and the road needs plan. Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.6 Corporate Services Department A, Report 2023-118 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the formation of a working group for road authority jurisdiction for civil matters. Don, is there anything you want to highlight in that for council?
Not at this time. I'd leave it open for questions.
Questions from council on the report? Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Finch, that council request the Ministry of Attorney General, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Law Society of Ontario, and the Ontario Good Roads Association to form a working group to establish protocols for determining road authority jurisdiction in civil court proceedings. Councillor Mitchell, as the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I think the report outlined the issue very clearly. I can understand from the lawyers representing their client, they want to make sure that all the potential organizations that could have responsibility are covered in their lawsuits. But if it's costing this municipality and other municipalities money to go through the process of notifying that, hey, it's not our road, we're not responsible for that piece. This is one of those unglamorous things that that should be addressed to save tax dollars, so I support the motion.
Councillor Finch is the seconder. Anyone else? So would this take the form of a letter that we'll send to all of them? Okay. Okay. I just wonder if we should be circulating as well to like other area municipalities or whatever, or just AMO, I guess is we're gonna say is gonna cover all that.
We would certainly circulate to Oxford municipalities as well as our NPP.
Right. Anybody else? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.6B, Report 2023 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding Embro Housing Development. Dawn, is there anything you want to highlight for council in there before I ask them for questions?
Just in the report, it does note that the land would be donated at low or no cost, and I've been asked to clarify that it would be at no cost. So it would be a straight donation to the township.
Questions from council on the report? Councillor Mitchell.
Donna, just going to ask you one question then instead of a series of questions, because we exchanged some emails over the weekend and you answered a whole series of questions. So what I want to do is go through the process of parcel A, and you can tell me if and where I got it wrong. So first step is Langlois donates the land to Zorra Township. Second step, Zorra Township donates the land to Oxford County. Oxford County gives Langlois a tax rebate, which we don't know what that amount would be, from provincial funding that's available to the county for this type of project. Then Oxford County staff prepares a plan to build an apartment building, which includes donating the land to the successful bidding developer. Next step is Oxford County staff issues an RFP. Then the successful bidder works with Oxford County and Langlois to finalize the site plan. The developer builds the apartment building, extends the services to the building, and shares costs of access road with Langlois. And the final step is the developer either operates the apartment building or sells the building to somebody who does operate apartment buildings. Did I screw anything up there, Don?
No, just some clarification. So the township would actually be the one issuing the tax receipt, and that would be based on the appraised value. That's something that is required, that the county will obtain an appraisal for the land value. At that point, and prior to that, the township and county will work on a preliminary site plan that would also be something that we would be able to circulate to the public. So they would have some sense of what the building may look like with some renderings, as well as where it would be sited on the property. So based on that, the county would then move forward with preparing the RFP to select the constructor of the building. So it's a fairly straightforward process. Once the land is in municipal hands, the county can move fairly quickly on the project. Sorry, I did pass over that there will be planning approvals required for this. The property is zoned future urban growth, so it would require an official plan amendment from Oxford County Council. There would be zoning approval from this council and site plan approval from Zorra staff.
Anyone else? Questions on the report? Councillor Stewart.
And one other clarification, I guess, at the end of the day, the end result is that based on the value of the land or some assessment of the land, that will tie into the number of affordable units that are available within this development, correct? Does it guarantee affordable units is, I guess, the question.
So based on what the county will issue the RFP, the developer will be required to submit the number of units they would be required to provide.
And I would add that would be part of the judging criteria, you know, assuming there were multiple submissions, that would be part of it along with, you know, other criteria, but that would be the main one, would be how many affordable units would be achieved. Again, reminding you that affordable is 80%, it's the provincial legal definition of affordable in this case, which is 80% of market rate. Moved by Finch, seconded by Stewart, that council select parcel A as the preferred site for the Embro Affordable Housing Project. Councillor Finch is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
So, back in May, we had a notice to consider declaring municipal land surplus, followed by a community meeting. And we all received calls, emails, and discussions with community members. Then, with the June report, we asked for more information and more options to look at. I'm happy to see this report came back to us today with great detail. As you can see in this report, Township reached out to property owners having land within the boundaries of Embro, with the Township receiving one response of a parcel of land located on the unopened road allowance known as McIntosh Street. I would also like to inform the community, Cambro Court invited Marcus and I to a board meeting to discuss this topic, and they didn't feel it was right for them at this time. This is a process that needs to happen in order for us to make good, informed decisions for our community. We all have the information in front of us this evening, and I am confident council will make a well-informed vote. And as we move forward, we all have many more steps and community consultation options for everyone to attend, so your voices are heard. As a community, we all need to remember change is hard, and we will have growing pains with new ideas, decisions that we make. But we ask for more information and keep an open mind. Beautiful things can happen. I'd like to thank staff for bringing us all the reports we have asked for in great detail, and I would also like to take this opportunity to express my utmost gratitude to the Langlois Farm family for donating this parcel of land. They could have just taken this idea and done it on their own while we moved forward with this project on another location. But instead, they clearly heard the outcry from the community asking for other options, and they delivered. To give in such a large way is truly admirable and shows they love this community just as much as we do.
Councillor Stewart is the seconder.
Yeah, I'll first thank Don for the report. I was prepared to analyze and weigh options and was ready to weigh different factors because the options of Public Works Yard could have come with sacrificing that land for something else, or certainly the value of the land. The generous donation obviously makes this a totally different decision for me. So I think it was easy for that reason, but yeah, all the detail was there, and I'm glad we took the additional time for more options to present themselves.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Grigg.
There's not a heck of a lot else to say. These jobs are hard that we do. This is hard work, and when we first saw this concept come forward as a proposal that county staff identified an opportunity in our community, we knew that this was going to be hard, but we also understand on this side of things that within process there's time to explore options and do good work. I never anticipated getting to this stage of the process and having the decision not be nearly as hard as I thought it would be. I thought we were going to have to really make hard decisions. But I think there's immense value in recognizing at this point that believing strongly in our responsibility in these seats to work towards solving the concerns and crises in our communities, keeping that at the forefront and staying patient through the process has led us down a road where we didn't immediately say no to something that didn't look appealing. We said, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And this is the result of staff working very hard at not saying no too quick to something that didn't seem quite right. You know, I'd like to acknowledge the generosity of this donation. You know, Crystal spoke very well about that. This is an incredible opportunity that I never anticipated, and I can't wait as this continues to roll out, that the good news that this is going to be for our community, and the focus of this council in recognizing that and being able to stick to this and see it through. I realize I'm saying that now, and we're still just midpoint on this, but I'm very excited.
Anyone else? Councilor Mitchell.
I'm going to take the contrary and apparently minority position on this. I was prepared to declare Parcel B, the community center project, as excess property so that we could facilitate the project and receive a detailed proposal from Oxford County staff. I believe this is exactly the type of underused land that should be developed. And as far as the community objections that have been referred to that have caused the delays in moving forward with this, the first objection was that it's used for parking. And when I look at the benefit to Zorra Township, the community, or Embro, however you want to phrase it, the benefit of using it for 3 or 4 days of parking versus providing housing for 100 to 150 people, to me, that scale is heavily weighed toward the housing. The second issue was the lost green space, and to me, that's a red herring. This is not a developed community parkland where you can go and play on different things that are built there. And it's not a natural parkland where there's a trail, it's forested, there's natural flowers and wildlife there. Basically, it's the whole package is 5 acres of lawn with a few clusters of mature trees, of which we were going to take potentially half of that to develop housing. And the third issue was location was too far from downtown. Apartment buildings aren't meant to be built downtown next to single-family housing and townhouses. They're meant to be in their own space. And I think in order to maximize not only the number of affordable units, but the number of units that are going to be regularly priced, but within the price range of middle-class people, this building needs to be 4 to 6 stories high. And the indications are that it's will be a maximum of 3 with the plan that's been put forward. Quick comment on Parcel C, which is the Public Works. I was really nervous when we even considered putting this project under that parcel. The estimated value of this was between $1.5 and $3 million. Even if we're at the low end and we were able to clear $2 million on selling that. That is the last big project or piece of asset that the township has that we can dispose of that hasn't been earmarked for something already. And we need that, I'm going to say $2 million for other things in the township, whether that is a daycare, whether that is putting money away for road improvements, or just putting it into reserves to keep tax increases down, or things that we haven't even thought of yet. But we could not afford to donate that land. So I was glad to see that was taken off the table. As far as Parcel A, I'll admit it has several advantages. It has lower cost to extend its services, which makes it more attractive for potential developers. It's at no cost to Zorra Township except for staff time, which was an improvement in that way over the potential of $50,000 of the value of the community center money or property, or maybe $2 million for the public works. And the other advantage is that the township gets to keep both the public works yard and potentially the community center project for future development. And there was an excellent part of this report showing the 4 different options at this point as far as development of the public works. So I was glad to see that included. Politically, it makes sense because we are responding to the community backlash against this project. But I firmly believe that the complaints that I just outlined about the community center project will be replaced by complaints about shadowing, loss of privacy, lack of parking, increased traffic, and noise issues. So I'm not going to support the recommendation for 2 main reasons. First of all, as I said, this project should be 4 to 6 stories to maximize the number of units, and this parcel A is limited to 3. And the other part, I'm just not comfortable with this whole deal, and I can't say any more about that because I don't have any evidence of why I'm uncomfortable, and it would be totally irresponsible for me to say any further than that. But I learned a long time ago, when your gut says no on something, you should follow your gut. My gut says I prefer the original property, so that's why I'm not going to support the motion.
Anyone else? I support the motion on the floor. I really don't have anything to add. I personally, I'd be happy to have Councillor Finch's remarks stand as my own. I'd personally be happy to have her remarks stand as the township's comment on the issue. With the exception of one thing that I want to add, and that is Councillor Finch's absolute leadership to her community and this council on this issue, because as we all know, this was a challenging issue, like a lot of competing interests, and she was absolutely steadfast in the goal that needed to be achieved for the community and keeping her eyes on that goal, and trying to address all the obstacles and opportunities along the way to get us there. And in my opinion, we have absolutely got there. I'm not going to lie, there were times in this process where I leaned pretty hard on her to say, can we actually get this done? And she was the one who said, yeah, we can get this done. We have to get this done. And she was persistent, and because of that persistence, we've come up with the generous donation of land from the Langlois with a third option. So I'm going to stop there because I said I was happy to have her remarks stand as mine, but I did want to point out the leadership that she offered, again, to the community and to this council, and leading us to this as an option that would even get in front of us. So I will absolutely be supporting the motion on the floor. Is there anyone else before I call the question? I will read it again and call the question. Moved by Finch, seconded by Stewart, that council select parcel A as the preferred site for the Embro Affordable Housing Project. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And no correspondence. Boards and committees, 10A. Any questions on the Zorra Multi-Use Courts Committee agenda and minutes? Moved by Stewart, seconded by Grigg, that items 10A be received and filed for information purposes only. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 11 information items. A, correspondence from the Honorable Lisa Thompson regarding increasing dead stock capacity initiative. Is there any questions for staff on that? Councillor Mc...
No questions, but some comments, because unfortunately, as a longtime livestock producer, I have some expertise in this area. And as I said earlier about another issue, this is a long way from a glamorous issue, but it is a place where government can actually help. And the unfortunate reality of livestock farming is when you have livestock, you have dead stock. And over the last 20 years or so, the cost of disposing of that dead stock has become significant to farmers, and I'm glad to see that the province is, it's not huge dollars, but it is something that will make a difference, and I would just ask that we publicize this on our website and through social media so that any farmers that are potential beneficiaries from this program are made more aware of it.
The clerk is nodding, so that will happen. Anybody else on this? Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Finch, that item 11A be received and filed for information purposes only. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 13, notice of motion, moved by Grigg, seconded by Stewart, that the asset naming policy be amended to remove council as the approval authority for reviewing submissions to the registry and be replaced with the director, and the process be updated to reflect this change, and that any approved applications be included in subsequent agenda packages as information only, and that the asset naming policy be amended to include guidelines for how the name registry will be utilized by staff and council when naming facilities, roads, parks, etc. Deputy Mayor Grigg is the mover. Do you wish to speak to that?
We spoke about this briefly the last time we had applications come forward. So I really view this just as a housekeeping item. This is going to streamline the process, allow for staff to deal with that first piece, which clearly they're capable of dealing with. It also means that residents who make submissions are not waiting on the scheduling of council meetings for them to be dealt with. The only piece that I wanted to make sure was that when the submissions were approved, that was because the council meeting was our method of sharing that information with council as well as the public. That was the only piece that I wanted to make sure that there was still that piece moving forward. That's all.
Councillor Stewart is the seconder. Anyone else? Councillor Mitchell.
Question for Deputy Mayor, and that's, I fully support anything that streamlines processes like this. But my question is, when we set up this whole system, I think we were expecting more detail and more information on an application so that whoever made the decision could make a broader based decision. And the last time council considered some submissions, there was 5 submitted and we only went ahead with 1. And one of the reasons, not only in those ones, but previous ones we've decided not to do, was because the submissions were just, in some cases, 2 or 3 lines that really, unless you knew the person or knew the family, you really didn't have a context to why they should be honored in such an important way. So is part of this tightening this up, or do you feel it's already in there that staff can get more information to make the decision?
So I would say the onus has always been on the person who's submitting the nomination, the submission, to provide adequate information that meets the requirements of the policy. I think what we've seen is some people have looked at the form and perhaps haven't spent enough time with the policy to make sure that they're meeting those requirements. So I think what's actually more beneficial for those submissions and for the policy would be if they go to staff and it's missing some gaps, then staff can bounce that back to them and they have an opportunity to fill those in, where previously when it was going to council, by the time council was talking about it, we had got into discussions about us knowing information that better allowed for us to assess the submission, which in turn politicized these decisions. So I think by having staff, I think the policy is clear in what it is it's looking for in terms of information, and by staff managing it, that will allow for members of the public to get that feedback and resubmit if there are gaps, as opposed to having it be denied at the political level.
Anyone else?
Sorry, I guess I should also look to staff and say, does that sound? Yes.
Anyone else? I'm going to read it again and call the question. Moved by Grigg, seconded by Stewart, that the asset naming policy be amended to remove council as the approval authority for reviewing submissions to the registry and be replaced with the director, and the process be updated to reflect this change, and that any approved applications be included in subsequent agenda packages as information only, and that the asset naming policy be amended to include guidelines for how the name registry will be utilized by staff and council when naming facilities, roads, parks, etc. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Love that. Items of community interest and the calendar. So, tomorrow is the Oxford Community Foundation Warden's Golf Tournament. And while I'm sure the warden will be entirely impartial, the mayor of Zorra is absolutely going to be rooting for the Zorra team tomorrow. The next thing I show on here is on Saturday, Reuse-a-Palooza Ha in the Embro Community Center. I think 8 till 12, although if past is anything to go by, if you want to see anything happening, you better be there before 11 probably to see anything actually going down, because stuff tends to go pretty quickly, and so that's always an interesting event to go to. And then if anybody is interested, there is Southwestern Public Health is putting on, well, not putting on, they're making a presentation to Woodstock City Council on consumption and treatment services sites on Tuesday the 26th at 1 o'clock. Oxford Council meeting on the 27th. And National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on Saturday the 30th, and a walk in Ingersoll. I can't remember what time that's at. Like the event 4:30 p.m. till something in the sometime in the evening. I can't remember. In Ingersoll. And then on Tuesday the 3rd, our newest recreation employee, Allie Thompson, starts. And then we're back here on the 4th for council at 9:30. Anybody got anything else? Councilor Mitchell. Councilor Finch.
On the 26th, the Knox Church is having a lunch at the Highland again, 12 o'clock.
Okay. Councilor Mitchell.
Two events on Saturday, September the 30th at the Brown School. There'll be a car and truck show between 10 and 2. Lunch will be available, including excellent pie. Chalmers United Church in Kintore, their fall strawberry supper is the same day. Adults $25, 5 to 12 years $15, and they have sittings at 4 o'clock, 5:30, and 7 p.m. Just a comment, I'm glad to see events going back to in-person. Prior to COVID, these community events not only were fundraisers, but they were also community events where people went and met and talked to their neighbors at other places other than going to funerals. But some organizations, now that we're through COVID, continue to do the drive-throughs and the pickups, and I understand why, because it is a whole lot less work. But to me, they're missing out on the other part of a community event, and I think personally I'm sad about that. I would like to see us get back to where we can go and meet with our neighbors rather than driving through, grabbing your food and going home. So I just wanted to but those are the two events on the 30th in my neck of the woods.
Sorry, could you, the Browns car show again, what was that, noon? 10 to 2, thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Grigg.
The event in Ingersoll, the ISAN event, the March for Truth and Reconciliation, it's from 4:30 till 8:30, with the march, I believe, happening at 6 o'clock from Memorial Park to the Ingersoll Cheese and Agricultural Museum. And then I have ROEDC meeting this Friday.
This Friday. Okay.
When you say this Friday like that, that makes me think, do I have that wrong? This Friday in Swax, yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, so then what I'm showing as left is closed, confirmatory, and adjournment. You're good? So for anybody watching this, either live or on video, we're not gonna come back to video after we go to closed, just because we only have confirmatory and adjournment on the agenda, and we're gonna let staff go rather than hang around and wait for us to do closed and come back just to put on the video for 5 seconds for me to say the meeting is over. So I'm gonna read the motion to go into closed. When that's done, the video will stop, and that'll be the end of the video for this council meeting for anybody watching. Moved by Finch, seconded by Mitchell, that council move into a closed meeting session at 7:05 PM pursuant to section 239.2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Lisa, can you let us know when we're off audio